I hope by this time of the year, everybody realizes the enormity of having a defensive swing of 18 points, 18 points, 17 points, 16 points, or 16 points can put on your entire matchup. Because defense has never been more important than it is today. And that's why we go through weekly defense rankings for fantasy football, and we're doing that for week 13 on Thanksgiving week. And I'm already one of the only fantasy YouTubers who covers defense multiple times a week. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, getting into our first tier, I've got the Seahawks defense still in first place because they're taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Now, it was a little bit of a disappointment from the Tennessee Titans this past week because that was a theoretically fantastic matchup that they should have never done bad in. And they weren't really bad necessarily for fantasy football, but it was definitely not what it should have been. They only had 4 sacks in that game, didn't get a single turnover off of Cam Ward, which has been kind of his thing this year. But there's a big reason why I ultimately believe Minnesota, in theory, actually might be a better matchup. I've been discussing this over the weeks. JJ McCarthy went on to a podcast just this past week discussing how basically they're rewiring everything he's doing. His throwing mechanics, the way he holds the ball, everything from the release to the mechanics, everything is being rewired. Well, you know who that works for? When you get to sit on the bench. Not when you're in the middle of a season as their starting quarterback. Now, unfortunately, it may not actually be him this week. They might end up starting the rookie quarterback from Minnesota. Either way, this offense is in shambles, and we're talking about a dominant defense here. There's just no way they're not at number 1. And at number 2, the Broncos defense is a very great play this week, and they're going to Washington on Sunday night to take on the Commanders. This one to me also feels like pretty bulletproof. Now, Jaden Daniels is returning to practice this week, but he's not expected to start for the team. So the Broncos come out of the bye week, get to play the Washington Commanders, and they are without obviously Jaden. They're obviously down multiple playmakers. Offensive line doesn't look great. And Denver's pass rush is the most lethal in the entire league. Denver's pass rush is absolutely phenomenal. They have 49 sacks through 11 games. And that's really been the bread and butter of the team this year. So I don't think that there's any chance Washington puts up more than 10 points in this game and holds less than 5 sacks. I think that Denver's defense is a phenomenal play this week. At number 3, I've got the Chargers defense, and they're playing the Raiders. Guys, I said this last week. I know there's a lot of Raiders fans who come onto this channel, and I'm not trying to insult you guys as fan base. There's just no other way for me to process this information. The Raiders suck. I mean, there's an argument to be made that they are the worst team in the NFL right now. Worse than the Titans. Worse than a lot of, they are so bad. There's no hope for this offense here. And they just fired Chip Kelly, which I actually think was a good move. That guy was never the right hire. But I will tell you this. It's not going to solve things. Like, Geno Smith is a turnover machine. He's been getting sacked like crazy, and they're not putting up many points on the board. There's just no saving grace here. And the Chargers are coming off a bye week, so they'll be getting a little bit healthier on the defensive side of the ball probably. I don't see how this just isn't a tier 1 play this week. And the Chargers aren't even that great of a defense, but this play is amazing. The Texans defense is still inside tier 1, and they're at number 4. They're going to Indianapolis to take on the Colts, and I said this last week when I was going through the defense rankings early for week 13, and I said, listen, the Texans defense is just too dominant for me to really just leave out of this area because we just saw what they did against the Bills offense. I mean, they sacked Josh Allen, 8 times that night? They were all over him. So Indianapolis is a team that I would argue, even though they almost won against the Chiefs, and Daniel Jones didn't throw an interception, I would argue that this is a team that is actually starting to see Daniel Jones fully morph into the Giants version of himself. He does not have that same playmaking ability. He has not been the efficient guy that he was at the beginning of the year. I do think that the Texans defense offers another challenge for them. And by the way, the Texans are basically coming off a mini bye week since they played last Thursday night. So there's just, again, no way for me to process the information other than to say it's an elite defense, one of the 3 elite defenses in NFL this year, and they're playing against a quarterback who I think is going backwards rather than forwards. I've got them as a top 4 play inside of tier 1. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got the Jaguars defense, and they're going to Tennessee, and like I said with the Seahawks, it was a disappointment. And I actually do think Cam Ward definitely made some plays more often than I'd seen all year. Like, Cam Ward was using his legs. He didn't turn the ball over. They actually put up points against the Seahawks. I will say, though, a lot of those points, garbage time points. And I don't think that I can see this really sustained for a long period of time. The Jaguars have done mostly well from a defensive perspective, and if only because they have 13 interceptions. That's why. You get a ball-hawking secondary, they're going to be a fine fantasy play. And ordinarily, Cam Ward has been throwing picks. He's been turning the ball over. I don't see how they're able to protect him, even from a pass rush that really isn't that strong with Jacksonville. That offensive line is garbage, and Cam Ward has been mistake-prone all year. I don't see how this one doesn't work out to be a solid play. The Rams defense is at 6 to round out this tier, and they're going to Carolina. So, my prediction about the Panthers on Monday night ended up being true. This was too big of a spotlight for them. If you put them up against the Saints on Monday night, maybe they would have done better, but they're used to that 12 o'clock window and not many people watching them. They're not used to the national spotlight. Now, there's no national spotlight on this game, but they are taking on probably one of the best 3 teams in the NFL who is hot right now. And from a defensive perspective, the Rams have been pretty awesome. Now, the only thing that's making me kind of question this one is because they're back in their comfort zone, basically in that 12 to 3 o'clock window. They'll do fine, I think, from an offensive perspective, possibly better than they did against the 49ers. But I do, there's just no other way for me to look at this one and say the Rams aren't going to be a good play either. The Rams, 31 sacks through 11 games, 12 interceptions through 11 games, 10 forced fumbles through 11 games. It's an elite defense, and I do ultimately think by the time this game is said and done, they're going to actually pound the Panthers, and this could be too low of a ranking, to be honest with you. One of the defenses you definitely need to keep your eye on the waiver this week is the Chargers in particular. I would say them, the Jaguars, and possibly the Rams are all on waiver wires. I've seen them on my own waiver wires, and the waiver wire has never been more important. This is why we have automated the process of getting up at 3 in the morning to go grab the best remaining free agents after priority waiver claims run. We've automated it for you so you can sleep through the night and still beat the rest of your league mates to the wire. So when you sign up to get that automatic waiver wire tool, you can also get access to my top 270 rankings this week. You can get access to the comparison feature, the league sync up feature on our site. And if you refer a friend, you and your friend will get a first month free on us. And also, if you just want a full team breakdown from me where we could go over your team in a live stream, have a live discussion and dialogue between each other on trade ideas, waiver ideas, ways to make your team more ready for a playoff push, we can also do a team breakdown as well. Dropping down to our next tier, I've got the Eagles defense at number 7, and they're playing Chicago on Black Friday. So this one, obviously a short week, could be bad for either team, but I was interested to see the line on this game with Vegas. And they opened up as like 7-point favorites. The Eagles did. I do think it's a really tough spot for the Bears. Now, you could argue with me, the Bears look good offensively and the Eagles don't. So I don't know how the Eagles defense is able to hold up on this offense if their offense can't score points. I would agree with you, but the Eagles defense largely has been very good. Ever since they made the change and traded for Jalen Phillips, their defensive structure has completely changed. So I do think there's a really good opportunity here for the Eagles at home, coming off an angry, bad loss. That's usually not a recipe for success against a really good team. The Eagles' sack number continues to go up. They've got 22 in 11 games. Still not great, but it continues to go up. They're also turnover prone. They've got 7 interceptions, 8 forced fumbles this year, and they can just hold opponents to very few points, and that's kind of what I'm expecting versus the Bears in this game. The Falcons' defense is at number 8, and they're going to New York to play the Jets. Now, obviously, I got this one wrong. The Falcons' defense was a solid play against the New Orleans Saints. And ultimately, the Falcons were always going to be in the top 12 of this one because it is the Jets. I don't care if it's Tyrod Taylor. I don't care if it's Justin Fields. They do not have any momentum to work with offensively right now. Like, it is just a tire fire from every perspective. Breece Hall, all you have to do is bottle him up. And the receivers, yeah, Mechie will make a catch here. Adonai Mitchell will make a catch there. But the Falcons defense actually has done well in certain spots. They're a very inconsistent defense. I've always highlighted this. They're hot and cold, but they do have 39 sacks through 11 games. That's a real pass rush. They've got 10 forced fumbles through 11 games and 9 interceptions through 11 games as well. Like, they are capable of having big ceiling performances, and it could be one of those weeks. The reason I always have to rank them lower is because of that super low floor that they have. So I do have to factor that in here, but I do believe they are a top 10 defense this week. The Colts defense is at 9 to round out this tier, and they're taking on the Texans at home. Now, the Colts defense, I can think of very similar thing about this matchup from the Colts perspective as I do with the Texans. So first of all, we don't even know if it's CJ Stroud again. Like, he's still in the concussion protocol. Kind of wondering if there's a benching situation going on here. Probably not. I'm just maybe overthinking it. But I will say, Davis Mills has done fine. But it doesn't change the fact that the Colts defense has done very well. Lou Anarumo has been a great defensive hire at the defensive coordinator position. Their talent is not questioned. They have plenty of talent. They just needed a coach to step in. Now they've got 33 sacks through 11 games. 3 sacks a game, that's a good number. 11 interceptions as well. Like, this team has done very well from a defensive perspective. And the Texans, even when they don't turn the ball over or maybe they don't give you 5 sacks, they can't score that many points on a weekly basis either. And so I do think this is probably a lower scoring matchup where the Colts end up having a good defensive performance as well. Probably a couple sacks added on to this one. Dropping down to our last tier, I've got the Dolphins defense at number 10, and they're taking on the New Orleans Saints at home in Miami. Again, they're in their element, and they're off a bye week. If this was in New Orleans, I wouldn't think as highly of them, although that would have been a dome game as well. Regardless, that's aside the point. The Dolphins, I do believe, are a solid play this week because Tyler Shug, once again, did not prove me wrong, and I don't think that he's that good of a quarterback. He can turn the ball over. They don't score many points as a whole, so I don't see how the Dolphins are a bad play this week. They might not be a great play because they're not really rich with playmakers on the Miami Dolphins defense. Like, they've got some playmakers, but overall, this defense, 21 sacks through 11 games, 3 interceptions through 11 games. There's not much playmaking and turnover upside as there is as far as getting a sack or 2 here or there and just holding them to 10 points. That's probably what makes them a good play this week rather than a bunch of turnovers. The Lions defense actually sticks in the top 12, and they're playing Green Bay on Thanksgiving. So again, I had a massive wake-up call when I watched the Lions absolutely get smoked by the Giants. That defense looked weak in that game. I still don't think they're weak. I think that was a little Jameis Winston magic going on there, and props to him because he is just so electric to watch. Green Bay's offense is just anything but electric right now. Like, their offense, they're lacking their playmakers. Maybe Josh Jacobs goes in this game, but it is a run-first offense, and they can take advantage of the pass the Lions can. That secondary, I do think, is getting better with the return of DJ Reed. Maybe there's some injuries there. It does look like there's some guys questionable this week. But overall, the Lions have played pretty well on Thanksgiving. So matchup definitely is going into account here, and situation goes into account as well. I don't think the Packers' offense can put up more than 20 points. And if they do, maybe they'll get some stacks and an interception or 2 as well. I do think the Lions end up actually being a solid play, even though this one doesn't look like a great play. And the Vikings defense still hangs on to 12 here, and they're going to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. By all accounts, this one sounds crazy. I'm fully aware of this one. What I said, though, on Friday when I went through the early version of the rankings was, if you look at Sam Darnold, what has he done this year? Mostly awesome, but the one team that owned him last year owned him again this year. The Los Angeles Rams made him look like the Jets and Panthers version of himself, and he threw 4 interceptions. Well, if you look back to last year, that's what happened in the playoff game. Now, what's the other team that knows him very well and knows his weaknesses? It's the Minnesota Vikings and Brian Flores. They went up against him in practice every day for a year. So if you don't think they know the guy's weaknesses, you're kidding yourself. This is not because I think the Seahawks are going to be in this low-scoring matchup. I think the Seahawks win this game probably 23-6, something like that. But this is me saying I think there could be some turnovers and some sacks here on Sam Darnold to make the Vikings defense a solid play and potentially an upside play this week. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 12 kicker rankings for the fantasy playoffs, click on this video right here.